Hey, what's up? This is Chosen. Welcome to the studio. We're about to jump into the test server because obviously we have got the Oella Fusion starting here in just a couple days. So we have access to a test server behind the scenes so we can give you a sneak peek on some of the stuff. Obviously, the most important thing down there being Oella's base stats and some of the, finally getting to see everything revolving around her in game. But what I want to talk about in this video is, does this change my opinion in terms of going after Oella? Because Oella does have some ability in her kit that is going to get a bonus from being with a tandem of hers, and that is Ultan of the Shell, who we have not seen yet. Right here is Ultan of the Shell. So we're going to dive into Ultan of the Shell, and we're going to talk about his multipliers. He is a damage dealer, actually. So we're going to talk about how he compares in the scheme of raid, and if he can actually put out some deeps, and if this tandem between Oella, who is the fusion champion, and now finally getting to see Ultan, if that is going to change my perception at all in terms of how I view this upcoming fusion. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are. Now, we already know the drill on Oella, but I guess really quickly we could talk about her base stats. There's really nothing to take note of other than she has an excellent base speed and a really good base resistance. She's a support champion, so she needs good tankiness and ideally good speed as well. So there is nothing in her base stats that would change my overall opinion of her, but it is really nice to see the 110 base speed, and it's also nice to see there's nothing alarming, there's nothing bad that would turn me off of her as a champion. But like I said, we want to focus on Ultan because this is going to be changing how we view about her as a fusion potentially. And the way that Ultan will affect her is she's got an A1 here that will have a big version of decreased speed that is insanely consistent at a 100% chance when booked. And if Ultan is there, it cannot be resisted. Plus, she also has the passive here that places a 15% continuous heal buff for 2 turns on that ally and instantly activates it if Ultan is on the same team. So what we're going to be doing is getting an instant big heal instead of just the continuous heal that needs to sit on the ally for a turn. So what you can see here is it would kind of be a burst heal when you need it, because it's whenever an ally loses 15% or more of their max HP from a single hit, boom, we're going to place a continuous heal buff. But if Ultan is there, boom, we're going to activate that continuous heal and basically have an instant mitigation whenever somebody gets hit hard. So that's how Ultan will affect her. And now let's talk about Ultan. So obviously he's going to be a damage dealer, which means his toughness is a little bit low. The base HP of 15k, the defense of 900, the base attack of 1553 is pretty solid. But remember, it always comes down to the multipliers. I'll actually do my best to give you a sneak peek of what those multipliers are going to be for Ultan and what I think that means. And then he's got the normal 63% buffed up crit damage and the 30% resistance. Is not quite what Oella is there at 50, but it's to be understandable because he's a damage dealer, he's not a support. For his A1 right here, he's got a multi-hitter that is going to be a very reliable defense break single target, and he's also going to ignore resistance if Oella is on the same team. So he is going to need a little bit of accuracy in his kit probably, but at least it can't be, or he's going to ignore some resistance if he's with Oella, and he can also steal any increased defense buffs right there in the second effect of his A2, and that part cannot be resisted. So, and even if he's not on her same team or anything, he's going to be very reliable at removing increased defense buffs on this multi-hitter A1. Then he has an A2 that is remove all debuffs from this champion, so we get a solo cleanse, heal this champion by 20% of max HP for each debuff removed, and then place a shield on this champion for 2 turns, and the value of that shield will be equal to the surplus heal from that first part of healing based on the cleanse. And then lastly, he is going to attack an enemy and he will ignore shield. Then also damage increases by 20% for each debuff that he cleansed on himself with the first part of the ability, and it is a 3-turn cooldown. Then he gets an AoE here on the A3 that is going to be a 100% chance of placing a sleep debuff for 1 turn, and will ignore 50% of the target's resistance if Oella is on the same team. So obviously we're going to want a decent amount of accuracy on him so that we can constantly manipulate the defense and also defense break on the A1, and then also get the CC effects from the sleep, but it'll be a lot easier to hit that accuracy threshold if we are on the same team as Oella. And we're also going to fill the champion's turn meter by 15% whenever a sleep debuff placed by this skill expires, which that is pretty important because it is a booked up 4-turn cooldown. So it's very nice that we get the turn meter to make it more of like a 3.5 cooldown instead of a 4. Then Ultan has this passive right here that is going to be kind of like a baked in reflex set, because we've got a 15% chance of decreasing the cooldown of one of the champion's skills by 1 turn every time they are healed by a continuous heal, which is going to be pretty consistent based on what kind of champions you have in his team, and Oella places those as well. And then it's going to be a 30% chance if he is on the same team. So now on the same team as Oella. So we take this A3, and it was a 4-turn cooldown, and we said the turn meter buff gets it like a 3.5. Well, now we're at like a 3-turn cooldown, or maybe like a 2.75 or something, because of the constant reflex-like procs of the passive. And he also has an ally attack in all battles by 30%. So, okay, now I want to show you some testing I was doing of Ultan in action, because we got to try to figure out how hard this guy hits and what his multipliers are, so we actually know what this kit is and what these base stats kind of mean. Okay, now this is going to be some testing that I did to try and figure out how hard Ultan hits and how well he is going to scale with that base attack. So what I did here was I put him in a similar situation against void targets so that we're not hitting strong or weak. And then I put him with another damage dealer right here on the left is going to be Cupidus. And then over here on the right is Ultan. And then we got the Arbiter there just to kind of boost the attack and then get us off and running to get the turn meter filled. I've got them both with no gear. They are naked, no masteries and all that. They're both booked. They try to make them as similar as possible. So they're both naked, no masteries, but they are booked. So they should be pretty relative to each other in terms of their power compared to one another. So then what we want to do first is you see that we've got this Flames of Passion ability from Cupidus. And what this is going to be, or the reason this is important, is because we know Cupidus's multipliers. So if I can figure out how Ultan hits compared to Cupidus on a similar target while they are built very similarly, then I can try to kind of reverse engineer Ultan's multipliers, or at least get in within the ballpark to figure out if he's going to be a massive deep Sir nuker or if he's hitting like a wet noodle. So here we go, and we've got the Flames of Passion AoE from Cupidus with the chance to, and there we go. So, we're hitting for somewhere, we want to look at the non-crits. They should both have a 15% crit rate because they're naked with no gear. So the critting is going to be a little bit RNG. So let's go by the non-crits. Up on the top left, we've got 3,500. Up on the top right, we've got 3,800 coming out from Cupidus on his AoE. And then obviously he places the HP burns with that ability as well. So like 3,500, 3,800, stuff like that. So now we've got somnolescence. How in the world you say that? Somnolence spores. Interesting. I'm taking a detour and I'm looking up what somnolence means, and I guess it means being in a state of wanting to fall asleep. So I guess a fancy way of saying that someone is extremely tired. Okay, well, learn something new. I learn something new every day. We learned a cool new word in somnolence. So, okay, we've got somnolence spores here. Now, this is going to have a lot of utility on top of just doing damage, because we're going to be placing the sleep on an AoE, which can be very handy. And we are also going to be ignoring resistance and filling turn meters. So this is not just a nuking ability, but let's see how it hits compared to Cupidus, and boom, look at that. So 3,500 to 3,800, kind of similar to Cupidus. We really can't get any more comparable between the two. We went by the top left and the top right on Cupidus, and they were like 35 to 3,800, so extremely similar there on the AoE. And this actually looks, I want to let this play out because this looks like a really cool AoE attack. So look at this thing. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a brand new animation and a super cool looking AoE attack, very similar to Cupidus. So now we want to compare the single target abilities. Let me rewind here a little bit so you can see what that looks like. Yeah, so Flame Out here for a Cupidus is going to be increasing his attack, which we already have. And then we're also going to be hitting extremely hard while placing an HP burn debuff that cannot be resisted. So Flame Out is pretty infamous for being an extremely hard-hitting single target ability. So let's see how they compare to the new champion here in Ultan. And boom. So on that front on that front right target, we hit for 5740. And now let's see how Ultan is going to compare. So now he's got a little bit more utility in his single target ability, because we are going to be placing shield and ignoring shield and getting a reliable self cleanse and a heal. So pretty insane utility here on this ability. It's probably not going to hit as hard as Flame Out because we get so much more than just the damage. And yeah, so what was it? It was like 5,700 versus 4,800. Yep, 5740 versus 5740 versus 4800. Yep, so hitting about 80%, 85% as hard as Cupidus on the single target ability compared to him. And if you want to see what that looks like, I will play it again one more time. If you want to see what his single target animation looks like, the AoE animations were super cool. Okay, I like it. Yeah, that's a pretty cool single target ability there for Ultan. And obviously, it would not be a chosen plays video if we didn't have some sort of spreadsheet infographic type thing. So this is going to be my best estimate that I can come up with when comparing the multipliers here based off of testing with Cupidus in a very similar scenario. So Cupidus has a base attack of 1520. Ultan has a base attack of 1553. So actually pretty good there that Ultan can scale a little bit better with gear. It's not significant, but it is a little bit better. And then the AoE multiplier, I'm guessing that it's going to be about a 4.0 there for Ultan because it was hitting very similar to Cupidus in our testing. So 4.0 there is my prediction on the multiplier for the AoE. And then for the single target ability, I'm gonna guess it's about 5.5, 5.6, which honestly isn't that bad because it does have a lot of utility with the cleanse and ignoring shield and all of that. So I don't think he's gonna be like a Trunda or a Baron type of nuker, but in terms of dealing damage based on the utility that he brings, honestly, my first impression is pretty solid. But then we have to ask ourselves, does this guy bring anything special to the game? Because he's not going to be like a god tier nuker. He's going to be a decent damage dealer. And honestly, I think the answer to that is going to be the AoE sleep. This could be really fun to have on your account if you don't have a good sleep mechanic champion to help you out when the time comes that you want to progress in the Sand, Devils, and Acropolis. So honestly, that's probably the coolest part about his kit, in my opinion, in terms of what it's going to bring to your account and bring to the game. But it's not going to be anything like the hype we saw around Shogger, because Shogger has this A1 that can be a 75% chance to sleep. So that's why everybody was so hyped up about Shogger and helping in the Sand, Devils, and Acropolis, because he's Void Affinity, never going to be hitting weak, and can be a pretty fun damage dealer to have now that we get the more increased value with that A1 sleep to help us out in Sand Devils. So honestly, I would say as of right now, I'm cautiously optimistic about Ultan and his effect on the tandem. I think they can be a pretty cool tandem to have. The problem is, like, I think it's going to be a little bit more realistic to get the Fusion champion than to get the champion that pairs with her in Ultan. Now, obviously, Plarium's probably going to be lurking and thinking about doing a guaranteed summit event. Do not be surprised if we see a 150 Ancient Shard guaranteed event for Ultan here in the next month or two. I bet you that comes down the line if I had to predict. And, I actually did guess that the next Void champion guarantee would be Shogger because they released the Sand Devils Necropolis, and then boom, they did a guaranteed event for Shogger. The unfortunate thing was it was 110 voids, and if it was like 80 or 90, I probably would have personally done it myself and would have seen a little bit more participation in it. But unfortunately, with the inflation, I wasn't going to do the 110 voids for Shogger. But if they do 150 ancients for Ultan, I'll probably consider it. They do seem to have some fun utility and some decent capabilities here as a tandem, and it just comes down to how realistic the events are once they finally go live and how much it makes sense for us to go after Oella. But I do think, like, they're interesting. Like they've got potential. I don't think that this is an automatic trash can fusion in tandem, and I also don't think it's going to be like the best thing we've ever seen in the game. I think it's just kind of like decent with potential to be fun. So yeah, it would mean a lot if you subscribe to the channel and like the video on your way out, as it goes a long way towards helping me out here on the channel to continue testing as much as I can for you. And speaking of testing, I'm going to be live today playing on the test server now that it's publicly shareable. I'm going to hang out with viewers and test anything that you would like me to dive into and show more of in relation to the Fusion champion and also Ultan. We'll get like a dedicated infographic and a champion guide out about the Fusion, but I wanted to dive in and talk about Ultan because I think this is going to be the thing that really is either the cherry on top or the deciding factor for me to say, screw it, it's not really worth going after the Fusion. As of right now, let me know what you think. If you disagree, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think Ultan is kind of fun, and given the fact that we may see some sort of event to get Ultan, I think it could be interesting for some accounts to add both of them. But we're gonna do a lot more testing and a lot more videos here on the channel, diving in to make sure that we're making the best decision possible when it comes to the Oella Fusion and how it relates to this new Ultan champion in the game added here as well. So have a good rest of your day. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you soon in the next video and the live stream to test all of this stuff out. Thanks for watching. Peace.